Let's cameras action, everybody. Listen, let's ready to go. It's Monday, March 6th, 2023, year of our Lord. This music, I like rap music or people that are a little bit who aren't, young. Those of us who have a little maturity to us, there's something to be said that we can embrace all types of music, including classical, and I believe this is called hip hop. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sports fans everywhere. Today's Monday, and so it's time for the Monday morning review of the sports that happened over the weekend. I'm not going to get to cricket. I'm not going to get to swimming. I'm not going to get to arm wrestling. We're going to do some things that are just pretty much basic American sports. So if you're in Europe or Asia or South America, we're going to give you the American sports wrap up. Let's start off with the Boston Bruins. Yes, the Boston Bruins. You're going to say, hockey. That's right, hockey. We're starting off with hockey. Let's get to it. David Pastrnak, he just recently signed a new contract, and he had a goal and two assists just a few hours after signing his contract, a new contract. And the surging Boston Bruins became the fastest team in NHL history to reach 100 points by beating the Buffalo Sabres 7-1 on Thursday. Jacob Lako scored twice, and newly acquired Dmitry Orlov added a goal and two assists. Jeremy Swayman stopped 26 shots, and Boston improved to 48-8-5 in its 61st game, besting the Montreal Canadiens team from 1976 to 1977. Oh, I remember those years well. But they reached 100 points in 62 games. 62 games. Okay, but that's when there was no regulation ties and no extra points. So there is a little caveat to this, and no extra points for overtime or shootout victories. So the Boston Bruins actually have reached 100 points faster because things have changed, the rules have changed, and it gives them points for overtime and shootout victories, which they didn't have before. They just had ties, and that was that. Also, during the day, the Bruins acquired Taylor Bertucci from Detroit. Now, Taylor's game is going to be needed as right winger Brad Marchand left the game with a lower body injury, joining two other key players, Nick Fogliano and Taylor Hall, on the injured list. Now, hockey is going big. And not only that, they really make trades. Okay, they actually, and the NBA, it's hard to tell. They trade for three players and it takes three teams, and this team goes to that, and the salary cap. They've really screwed it up there in the NFL. Actually, in the NHL, they just make trades. They give you two players for two players, three players for two players. And the New York Rangers, yes, New York, pulled off one of the biggest deals of the week, acquiring Patrick Kane from the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, the Rangers, they have one of the more impressive rosters in the Eastern Conference, and it's loaded with Stanley Cup contenders. Just earlier this month, the Rangers acquired Vladimir Tarasenko from the St. Louis Blues. So bringing Kane into the mix just makes that top six look even more daunting for opposing defenses. New York is loaded for bear, ready to go. The New Jersey Devils, which is like the next state over, New Jersey, New York, snagged Timo Meier from the San Jose Sharks for their playoff push. Meier, 26 years old, is a bona fide star, and he has recorded 31 goals and 21 assists in 57 games played this season. With Meier on the ice in 5-on-5 situations, the Sharks have controlled, or they did control when Meier was with them, a staggering 58% of expected goals, according to the natural stat. So after spending over a year on the trade, and also, okay, that's just Timo Meier. Timo Meier is probably the most coveted player in the whole trade scenario. Everybody wanted him. The guy is scoring goals. He can play good defense. He's a star. And the New Jersey Devils got him. Okay. After spending over a year on the trade block, Jacob Chicherin finally has a new team. And the Senators have a number one bona fide defenseman, despite playing on he played on one of the worst teams for his entire career. Senators picked him up. Citroen has put up some impressive numbers. He has constantly generated offense throughout his career, especially when it comes to goal scoring. 2019-20 season, Citroen scored 12 goals and took that to another level in 2021. He scored 18 in just 56 games. Now, the Ottawa Senators are in fourth place, but they are on a hot streak with, I think they've won the last four games and 7 out of the last 10. Now, that may change over the weekend. Citroen is going to add even more fuel to that fire. So, the NFL is a fire right now, and it is an all-out feeding frenzy for the top dogs, and the bottom tier teams are trying to outdo one another in a fire sale panic. And it's one thing about the NHL. When the teams at the bottom are, at the bottom, well, they don't know their stars. They try to get ready for the draft. They try to pick up draft picks because the NHL draft is actually deeper than the NBA draft. NBA draft, usually the top 25 players are the ones that are going to make the rosters. And after that, not so much. Not the same with the NHL. There's a lot of players that will make the rosters. They also have a minor league, 2 minor leagues. So they do pretty well. And they have players that come over from Europe that actually do pretty well. So they have a bigger draft, and it means more to them to get a draft pick. Okay. But I led off with the Boston Bruins. And except for last night in the last 2 games where the Celtics lost to the New York Nets and the New York Knicks, the city of Boston is rocking. The Celtics have been rocking all year up until this weekend. And the Boston Bruins are rolling. And that's a good thing because the Boston Red Sox are in shambles, and the New England Patriots haven't been worth mentioning since they forced Tom Brady out the door. So Boston needs these 2 teams to do fairly well in order to have some confidence in themselves. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is March, and that means the start of baseball is around the corner. We hear reports of spring season, the Astros. You got Boston, you got New York, you got Los Angeles. Those are the teams that everyone knows. Okay, but did you know, or did you remember, that the Houston Astros actually won the World Series last year? That's right. Houston, they won it again, I think for the second time in 5 years. And they've been knocking on the door for the last 5 or 7 years as far as either in the World Series or going high in the playoffs. So, yeah, they won. They defeated the Philadelphia Phillies in 6 games. Yeah, that was last October, and nothing else has happened. So we don't have to talk about baseball any more than that. The spring training is in effect, and baseball is around the corner in April, and it's March now. So you got a month, maybe a month and a half before the games start. In the Northeast, it's going to be cold, but they're going to start most of the games in the South and in the West so that you don't have to freeze your butt off if you're in the Northeast city. That being said, it brings up something interesting. The Philadelphia Phillies lost in the baseball's World Series and in the Super Bowl. Yes, in the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles, they lost. Now, both of these teams made the pinnacle of their sport, and then they both lost. So, is the city of Philadelphia becoming the bridesmaid of the sports world? I mean, the runners-up to the real deal. Does this mean that in basketball, the 76ers, or in hockey, the Philadelphia Flyers have a chance to make it to their respective finals? The answer is no. No. In fact, no. The 76ers aren't making it out of the second round, and the Flyers ain't making the playoffs. So, but while we're on the subject of football, to be more specific, the NFL, because we do know that in Europe and South America, they call what we call soccer football. So our football is not football to them. I don't know what they call our football, but I do know they call it soccer football, or what we call soccer football. That being said, I want to talk about the NFL. Chicago Bears. Now they used to have two teams when they first started way back then, when they had the Chicago Cardinals and the Chicago Bears, and the Cardinals went to St. Louis, and where they're in Arizona now. But let's talk about the Bears. The Bears, that woe-begone shambles of a franchise. They stunk. Well, they stunk last year, and they stunk the year before, and they stunk the year before. In fact, the Bears have stunk the last almost 20 years. They were in the Super Bowl in 2006, but they're kind of a cheesy team. Nobody thought they would win, and of course they didn't. But they lost then. So they've just won one Super Bowl in 1986 with McMahon and the Refrigerator and Hampton and Walter Payton and those guys. So the Bears have been bad and at best mediocre for most of the last, wow. Well, that's what I mean, okay? But the NFL, there is no NFL without the Chicago Bears. Let's get into that. The NFL and the Chicago Bears originated in 1920 when the owner, manager, and coach, George Halas, originated the team. They were the Staleys. He took them from some team, some owner. Well, okay, let's not even go into that. But he started them in 1920. 1921, they became the Chicago Bears. Okay? Now, that being said, most of the teams outside the Bears, because he took them to Chicago, they were situated in secondary cities such as Dayton, Ohio, Portsmouth, Ohio, Frankfort, Pennsylvania, and even more that I can't remember. And these teams, the NFL teams or these professional football teams, could not compete attendance-wise with college football. Now, the Bears secured a contract to play in Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field. So they managed to get a nice big stadium. It wasn't theirs. It was Wrigley's. Chicago Cubs, I believe. Yeah, the Cubs team. And he let them play there. Well, when they weren't playing baseball. So the Bears drew crowds of 2,000 to 5,000 people. Well, that's not really bad, but the University of Chicago, they would draw 40,000 to 50,000 fans to attend their games. There's a big difference between 2,000 to 5,000 and 40,000 to 50,000. We're talking about thousands of dollars revenue, being able to pay for the stadium that you're renting, uniforms, food, clothing, health. No, they didn't have health insurance. Well, just leave that alone. But college football was king. The NFL was looked at as a joke. That's right. It's completely reversed these days. But at the time, college football was king. You had Princeton, Rutgers, Harvard, Yale, University of Illinois, and a lot of other colleges, Ohio State. These guys were getting the fans and the revenue. Okay. The NFL, no. See, the school institutions have been around for a while. For more than 30 or 40 years. They had roots in the regions, backers and alumni. They had their own stadiums. They had coaches that were well known and celebrated. I mean, Notre Dame, Army, Navy. Known, celebrated, alumni, backers. The NFL had none. Listen to me, none. None of these things. Okay? And they look like they were going to get them anytime soon. So we're dealing with one. Okay. You know what? We're dealing with a situation where it's just completely out of their control. They can't do anything about it. So it looks bad. It looks bad here. And I got some pictures of George Halas. Because George Halas is the guy who makes this happen. Now, George Halas not only was the owner and coach, he was a player. He played for the team that he was, that he owned and he coached. This guy was do it. He's going to do it, and nothing's going to stop him. He's going to get the job done. Chicago Bears, right there. Now, what can we say about Hallis that hasn't been said? I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say about Hallis that hasn't been said. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But this guy took nothing and made it something. Because if we're going back to 1920-21, nobody expected the NFL to last. Okay, it was predicted to be short-lived. Then in 1925, Hallis signs Red Grange, who was the top college star, and it gave the league a much-needed boost in attendance and notoriety. People started actually watching the NFL or showing up at their games because you remember now you couldn't watch, there was no television. But they started showing up at the games to see Red Grange because he was called the Galloping Ghost. Okay. Great college player. And now he was in the NFL because college only lasted 4 years. And now they could watch him there. All the people that didn't see him in college could now go to NFL games to see him. So it basically saved the NFL, the National Football League. Then in 1933, a man named Bert Bell bought and established what became known as the Philadelphia Eagles. And with him, he brought in two other teams from two other major cities, the Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the NFL, as we know it, begins. Because remember, at that time, most of the teams were secondary city teams. So now they're getting big city teams, major teams, if we consider Cincinnati, which it was at the time. So you have Pittsburgh, you have Philadelphia, you have Cincinnati, you have New York. New York was part of the group. They had a franchise in New York. So as it begins, the NFL as we know it is dominated by the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears would become known as the Monsters of the Midway. Hallis teams won 9 NFL championships and lost 5 other championships. They were in 5 other championship games that they lost. Now, this was before the merger in which the AFC and the AFL and the NFL get together. Okay? 9 NFL championships. And they've gone undefeated twice. They've had 2 undefeated seasons. Okay? They have had the largest margin of victory in the championship game. They beat the Washington Redskins 73-0 in the 1940 championship game. In the 1930s, the 1940s, and the 1950s, the Bears were not only respected, they were rationally feared by their opponents. Hallis teams were big, mean, nasty, tough. Bronco Nagurski they were known for knocking the crap out of you, on offense and defense. They not only tried to beat you, they made it a point to terrorize. It was their very essence. It was their very reason for playing the game of football. And all of this was fostered by George Hallis. Yes, that guy right there, George Hallis. Now, why do I say this? I say this because how does a team that once epitomized competitiveness and toughness come to be the mild meat milquetoast franchise that we see today? Well, it's pretty simple. And it has a lot to do with you and me right now. You see, the earlier Bears were George Hallis. The team represented a man who had bought a professional franchise for $100 in 1920 at a time when professional football had as much of a chance of surviving as a man did going to the moon in 1920. Slim and none. That's right. Yet Hallis made it work. Hallis was not only the owner, he was not only the player, he was not only the head coach, he was not only the general manager, but he was the chief financial officer. He had to make all the decisions, securing contracts for stadiums, securing contracts in other cities to go to their stadium, barnstorming as he called them. He was the promoter. He was the marketer. He was everything. He made it work. Hallis was an unrelenting, never quit, never give up, never surrendered individual, and his team became the same. These days, with us, the league represents society as it did then. They were tough men back then. Whether they were black, white, they were tough men. They worked hard, they played hard, and they fought hard. They didn't whine about being called Polish or black or Italian or Irish. You got nothing for being called a name. You better get out there and produce, or you ain't going to be out there. Well, today, soft, whiny, coddled babies. Yes, that's right. White, black, whatever you are, Mexican, Spanish, bunch of soft, coddled, whiny babies. Everyone was crying that they got called something. They weren't treated with respect. Looking to skate through life by claiming victimhood in any area of life that they can. Everyone has a crutch that they can pull out and lean on. Something Hallis, a self-made man, never used. You see, we need more men like this in America. I'm not saying that I'm a George Hallis. George Hallis is like a hero. I'd like to emulate George Hallis. And so should anybody else and so should any other man who has an ounce of man in him should want to emulate George Hallis. So, the point I'm trying to make is that it's a shame to see the Bears franchise, because I made fun of them last year, and I made fun of them the year before, and I'm mocking them. A team like the Bears franchise, who were once called the Monsters of the Midway and lived up to every inch of that name, to see how bad they've been for the last 15 years. Weak, excuse-laden, perennial losers. But this is my point. A team plays a lot like its management. And the Bears management has been weak, excuse-laden, and perennial losers. They've not put their best foot forward. So, to contrast what they were when Hallis ran the team to what they are now is a cruel joke to the city of Chicago. And I feel bad for you. How does this come? I was watching a documentary about the Bears the other night, and all this is 9 championships, and they were in the championship game 5 other times. And here I am making fun of them, mocking them, because they have been terrible. And the management has not. They have been terrible. And I think, looking back at the history of Chicago and Chicago Bears, you guys deserve more. So good luck in finding your feet once again, Chicago. Your fans deserve better. Well, actually, we all do. With that concludes my Monday morning review. I have to get up and get on out of here. I'm glad you can make it. I am in Boston right now. It is about 30-something degrees. It is not Naples, where it's 80 degrees. Right now, Naples is like 75 right now. But in Boston, it is 30 degrees and cold. But that doesn't stop anybody. It didn't stop George Hallis. I mean, Chicago, snow, sleet, rain, terrible fields, fog. There was a fog bowl there once. I mean, they couldn't even see how to hit someone or catch a football. You don't let it stop you, everybody. Let's get to it. Let's make this happen. Whatever we're going to make happen, let's make it happen. Let's get it done. Dig in. Make the trench. You're not in the trench. You are going to make the trench and fight in the trenches. Let's get it done. So from everybody, from Algeria to Zimbabwe, and all around the world, peacefully coexist with one another once. If you can, tell somebody you care about them, help somebody in what they are trying to do, and let's move forward in this world. That's Monday Morning Review from me, Clay Morris, on the Amazing Grace Sports Network, coming to you live, once again, from Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you and have a good day.